Good morning. I'm now in the Karura Forest Park here, not far from Gate C. So the gate is in that direction, it's 100 meters from here. This is in Kenya, Nairobi, and today is the 28th of, just need to make sure I always say the 28th of November 2025. So let's continue. Exodus chapter 24, verse 1. Then he said to Moses, "Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship from afar." Okay, so the introduction in this chapter is God telling Moses that he needs to, with Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 elders, to come closer. So the people ultimately is going to stay down. These 70 elders plus the 3 and the fourth one, which is then Moses, 74, need to come up and need to worship God, right? But not as close as Moses is going to get, understandably. Verse 2, Moses alone shall come near to the Lord, but the others shall not come near, and the people shall not come up with him. So the idea is the people stays down below. Moses and the 70 plus the other 3 mentioned, they come up closer, and then ultimately where they will worship God, and then ultimately Moses will be the only one to come all the way up to God. Right, so this is what we see here in verse 1 and 2. Verse 3, Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the rules. And all the people answered with one voice and said, "All the words that the Lord has spoken, we will do." So Moses then went down again, he spoke to the people, everything that God has told him. Now he's been going up and down a bit by now. And so when we read here all the words that the Lord has spoken and all the rules, then I would think at this stage it does not include the 10 Commandments, but we're going to see later on how they're going to say that they will do everything. So in that sense, I would say it's everything, all these words that God has spoken to, even though he might have already said some things, but this is now reminding of some of the other things that might have been said before earlier, which he already told him, and then all these new things that God told him that he's now telling. Because as we're going to see in this chapter, this renewing of the covenant, or this covenant is actually going to be signed in a certain sense here between the people and God. Okay, so the answer to all of this was that we will do exactly as what the Lord has spoken we will do. Yeah, fast words, right? It's I think when we come to Christ and we admit to our sins and then so often we have this feeling we're never going to sin again. You're like in the seventh heaven. You're not going to sin ever again. But then the next day, if not an hour or what later, some things just again go wrong. Sin again comes over your path, and you make again the choice to follow some of the older things. And that idea of Paul fight the new man fighting against the old man, and so yeah, they said they will, but we're going to see very soon how they're going to break that. Verse 4. And Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord. He rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. Moses wrote down. In the introduction I already mentioned the fact that it's as if, okay, these people were fools, they couldn't do anything. I mean, the Egyptians had writing, although hieroglyphics, but still they had a form of writing. And writing even didn't originate there, it came from Assyria. So it's not as if these people were these fools, like if it said it's written down. Now I know, yes, so okay, what do people then say? You say, yeah, but this is later on. This is not there then, this was later, this was written 2,000 years later or something, and then And these guys are only an oral society. They're in the desert. Where would they find anything to write on, etc. Right? As if they didn't have a whole big movement of things going on. And if they need to write, then there's certain things that like I'm out traveling through lots of different places, and I need to carry my laptop with me. If there was no need for the laptop, it would have been like a couple of kilograms lighter in all my weight. But I have to carry it along because I'm going to be away for so long, and I need to use that so that I'm for editing, and I need to carry it with so I can use it for editing later on. I haven't had any time at this moment yet to do any of that, but I'm going to need it for that. And so there's certain things that you would say, okay, you don't really expect a tourist like me to have with me, okay, but there are reasons because of how lots of touring I need to do the next couple of months, close to a year, and so I do need to have it with. So as well, you might, if these guys were just going to walk through the desert and that's that, and they will get everything there, or and Moses was not already kind of informed by God with everything happening that things needs to be done, then yeah, sure, they might not have had something. But because of how things are going, well, you would expect them in what they had available at that moment for writing down things, that they would have had it. So yes, it's not as if writing was such a late invention, or etc., right? So yeah, I take it at face value. What is, and this is ultimately, he wrote these things down. So then the other thing in this verse is he got up early in the morning. By now we know why early in the morning. And he built this altar. This is now the thing that's going to be like in the place of God, kind of, right? This is not the golden calf that they're going to build, okay? Because that is a different. They're going to try and apply that golden calf thing as well, just in the place of the God who let them out. Okay, like this altar is now going to be a symbol, because we're going to see how they're going to throw the blood against this altar. So it's going to be a symbol of God's presence with them. Okay, and the other thing is in the 12 pillars, according to the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, why 12 pillars? God just told them to destroy all the pillars when they enter the promised land. So why now allow for 12 pillars to be built? Why this kind of symbolism? Now, well, I think it's pretty straightforward, because first it's two different, right? Their pillars and everything was a place where they would worship gods, other gods. And in this case, this is not a place where they're going to worship at all. These pillars are not there as a place where they will bring offerings or anything like that. This is just a symbol of. Okay, so there's already in that a huge difference between the usage of the pillars and that those other religions had and what they're having here. This is not a place where they worship, right? This is just a symbol of. And I've already spoken. So, but this whole ideas, like I always saw there in Goa, how there's in other lectures I already spoke about that, but I'll just remind us here of how they took basically Hindu symbolism and put it into Mary and Jesus and all those kinds of things. And in a sense, it just made him another god. So is that right? Isn't that the same thing that's happening here? Where these guys have pillars, you have pillars. But these pillars means it's a symbol of, and those pillars means it's a place where you worship. Now, yeah, sorry people there, Roman Catholics in Goa, it's not the same thing, okay? It's not the same thing, you can't equate them. For the simple reason that those things I've seen, they have the garlands around it, they're worshipping it, they're bringing, like the Buddhists would bring and the Hindus would bring offerings to these kinds of places. That's what they're doing with it. Okay, so they're treating it exactly the same way like those people. See, here is a difference. These pillars of those people in Israel in the promised land, and then these pillars here, It's totally different. There's a place for worship. This is not the place for worship. Okay, and yes, ultimately it goes back to the 10 words of Decalogue, what God told Moses, that they're not supposed to worship, to make any images of anything on heaven and earth and worship it. These pillars, again, is not a place to worship God. This is a place as just symbolizing ultimately, like the altar is symbolizing God on the one hand, and the pillars symbolizing the people on the other hand, the 12 tribes. That's all. So it's not. So that is why you can't equate those kinds of things where I'm strictly against, and where God is against. Ultimately, I'm against because God is against it. And the making here of this building of the altar, and the same way, the people actually in the end can't equate the altar with, but that is a symbol of God, and this little golden calf we're going to make is just a symbol of God. No, they're going to worship that golden calf. There is a difference. There is a difference.